The South African military will end up as a mere militia. This is according to defence analyst Helmoed Heitman. He says the Air Force's entire Gripen fleet has been grounded because of a service contract that's expired, and that we can't afford to maintain naval assets, never mind deploying them, and major army equipment still being deployed date back as far as the 70s. But it's not the SANDF he's primarily pointing his fingers at, but at Cabinet. Well, let's speak to Helmoed Heitman now. Helmoed, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, I've seen those, in Simonstown, there are no naval vessels moving at all. And when I've spoken to some of the officers there, they say they just don't have the money to repair them. What is our military actually able to do apart from a bit of peacekeeping here and there?
Well, at the moment, not much more than that, and the border control. And even for border control, the analysis says they need to deploy 22 companies, and they've only got enough money to deploy 15. And its army is actually too small. It doesn't have enough troops for the peacekeeping work, plus the border, plus a little bit of reserve. So far from being too big, it's actually too small. The Air Force and Navy are probably a bit too big now in terms of people for the equipment they have, but the Army is too small. The problem is it's not just the maintenance also. Of course, if you can't use the equipment, you don't become comfortable in using it. So your training then isn't as good as it should be, and you're not going to be as competent as you should be if the pawpaw hits the fan one day.
Helmoed, remind me about that funny old arms deal. Whatever happened to that?
Look, we got the equipment, and contrary to popular opinion, we got good equipment at quite astonishingly good prices. I mean, everything we bought was either market price or less before you even count the defence offsets. And I compared it to what other people bought in the other countries bought in the same time frame. So we bought good equipment. The problem is nobody at the time thought government would run the defence budget down to the point where they couldn't maintain the equipment. That was not expected at that point. So the ships, for instance, the ships of the 4 frigates, they're now 20 years old. Only one has actually been refitted, and then only the ship systems. So the combat systems, like radars, the weapon systems, they're dying of old age. They're 20 years old. Electronics don't last 20 years as a rule. The same with the submarines. One submarine has been refitted. One is in refit. Same with the Gripens. They did manage to get the software update on the Gripens, but then they didn't get the support contract renewed for reasons that aren't entirely clear to me. So bit by bit, they cannibalized aircraft until finally they weren't any able to fly. And so it goes on. Even with local equipment, like the Oryx helicopter, only about less than half are actually operational. Of the Roy Falk attack helicopters, only 4. And 3 of those are in the Congo. So that explains why there are no Roy Falk attack helicopters supporting Special Forces of Mozambique.
What can those serving in the Air Force, the Navy, and just ground soldiers, what can they actually do all day if they can't update the equipment or use it or practice? What are they actually doing?
Well, a certain amount of training you can do. I mean, the fighter pilots, for instance, can do a certain amount of training on the simulators. They've got a good simulator system there. And for a time, they were able to keep their fast jet experience up on the Hawk. But now the Hawk fleet is also down to only a few aircraft flying, the Indian fighter trainer. So the helicopter people are busy, and some of the transport pilots are busy, although there are very few transport aircraft flying, but I think a lot of those are left. What's going to happen in the Air Force, I think, is we're going to lose a lot of pilots. We already have. We're going to lose more because they didn't go in to sit in a crew room playing tiddlywinks. So they're going to pack their bags and go off to an airline somewhere. And the Navy, again, they can do a certain amount of training aboard ship and in the simulator systems in Simonstown, but they're also going to get bored. And then the best of them will leave because the best will get jobs elsewhere. The Army is fairly busy because, all of it really, because they're so short of infantry. They're also using people from other branches to do border work. So they're pretty busy. But the problem again is the Armored Corps, the artillery, and so they find it difficult to train properly because there isn't money to keep all the vehicles operational in reasonable numbers, isn't money to have adequate ammunition for training. So it becomes problematical. And at the moment what's happening is that the people in the Defence Force, every time they get called on to do some job, somehow they pull a rabbit out of the hat and do the job. And they work minor little miracles to be able to do it. But that can't go on forever.
Would it be perhaps financially a wiser move to sell off some of this equipment?
Well, some you won't be able to sell because it's optimized for us, so we'd buy it. and some has now been not maintained for so long that probably nobody would want it. And then, of course, once sold, you'll never get it again. I mean, for instance, the frigates, when we bought them, they were 1.5 billion rand each. To buy a ship like that today would be somewhere between 5 and 6 billion at least, as a minimum. If we could get them refitted now, we can get it, and probably with a bit of luck, get another 20-year service out of them. But, if we sell them, they're gone, and you'll never replace them. If we don't refit them, then in 5 or 10 years' time, we might as well throw them away. They won't be worth refitting. So what we're doing here is we're wasting valuable assets. The same applies with aircraft. If you don't look after them, they will die like anything. You've got to use the stuff. And selling, some of it again, you're going to sell, we could sell the Gripens, we could come at a good price. We might be able to sell some of them. If you want to buy a new fighter aircraft, you're looking at several $100 million per aircraft with the spares package and training. So there isn't going to be any money to replace what we have.
Well, it's quite a depressing analysis, isn't it? All that high-caliber equipment, just sitting there. Thank you so much. That was Defence Analyst Helmoed Heitman.